So this Donovan Mitchell trade stuff is getting a little bit weird to me. Really, the only rumors or report that we've had lately is the fact that the Knicks and Jazz have re-engaged on trade talks in exchange for Donovan Mitchell, but that's really it. And to me, it's really, really weird that it doesn't feel like the rest of the league is all that interested in trading for Donovan Mitchell, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. So, apart from this Knicks rumor that I mentioned that I'll show on screen here, we really don't know anything about where the Jazz are in terms of trading away Donovan Mitchell. We don't really know anything about Donovan Mitchell's happiness with staying with Utah for the entirety of the season, and we don't really know what other teams could possibly be interested in trading for Mitchell. The only information we've gotten is that he would probably like to go to the Knicks, and that the Knicks are interested in trading for him. That's all we know, and to me, that feels really strange. I mean, this is a guy that is an all-star level player, is either in his prime or entering his prime, is on a multi-year contract. Why are other teams not jumping at this? Why are there not teams willing to give up significant assets in exchange for Donovan Mitchell? And to me, that's concerning. Maybe I'm way overrating the guy. Maybe my opinion of what Donovan Mitchell is, which is a very good all-star caliber player, not going to be the number one guy, not a Luka level guy, not a Jason Tatum level player, but still very, very good. That's what I think of him. But maybe the rest of the league doesn't think of him that way. Maybe he's a little bit too much Russell Westbrook for some teams, a guy that is at times inefficient, a guy that isn't always the greatest playmaker, and maybe is a little bit of a ball stopper. To me, this is maybe opening my eyes because I feel like there should be some other team. We're getting a little bit of rumors about Washington, a little bit of rumors about Charlotte, but like nothing really all that critical to the conversation around Donovan Mitchell. Like I would expect to hear a lot more about Miami potentially being interested in him or a team like that, and there's just nothing out there. And to me, that means one of two things. Either I'm way off in my evaluation of Donovan Mitchell and what the rest of the league should think of him, and I don't even consider myself like the biggest Donovan Mitchell guy, but I just feel like something's missing there. Or the Jazz aren't that willing to trade him right now, and or their asking price is way too high. And for me, all of this obviously is connected to the Knicks. We're going to get to what their trade package could possibly look like later on in the video. But to me, that maybe is the most likely outcome of all this, that Utah just isn't really in a hurry here. Like they don't see a real reason to trade Donovan Mitchell right now. They have time before training camp. They have time left on his contract. There's no impending free agency decision here, and they know what they have, and they know that they can get a ton of draft picks and some good young players in exchange for Donovan Mitchell. But the weird thing to me about that, if you're Mitchell, is why is he so content seemingly running it back next year with a roster that just isn't very good? Like if I'm him, I'm looking at this situation and there's rumors about where I could possibly go, and you've already traded away Rudy Gobert, which I'm sure he's happy about from a competitive standpoint. Like they're just not going to be all that good this year. Why is he not standing up and say, hey, like, can I get to a new team by training camp? And maybe that's just not the way he operates. Maybe that he's expressed that publicly and we just don't, or privately, excuse me, and we just don't know about that. But all of this just seems weird to me. Like, why would he be excited or indifferent about returning to a Jazz team that's clearly not interested in being a competitive basketball team this year? Why is that not a bigger deal for him? Now, obviously, we're making a lot of assumptions here because, as I said in the beginning of the video, we really don't know anything about the situation. So maybe privately he has said, hey, I'd like to be in a new team by the start of training camp. And maybe he knows that the Knicks are really the biggest factor in all this, and that's the team that he wants to go to the most, and maybe he's optimistic about possibly ending up in New York. But still, I felt like there should be maybe a little bit more urgency on his part. But now we have to talk about the Knicks, right? So for me, we've had this conversation before, the RJ Barrett, no RJ Barrett conversation. It feels to me like we've all solidified in the fact that RJ Barrett would be in this deal, and that even though he would need a new extension soon, he's a better asset than just like the random young guys that might turn into something on their roster. So it's probably going to end up, if it was a Knicks trade, looking something similar to this, where it's RJ, a ton of picks, and whatever salary you want to put in there, and then everything else on the edges of that, the young players you could possibly throw in, is up to the discretion of the New York Knicks. And right now, unless some other team jumps in front of them, it doesn't really feel like they have a lot of competition for Donovan Mitchell, whether that's just because Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to go anywhere else. And even though he has a few years left on his contract, he still has enough leverage to say, I'm not really interested in going to Washington or Charlotte, which, given what we're seeing with the Kevin Durant situation right now, I think it's relatively likely that that's the case, where he's like, I'll return to Utah, but if you're going to send me somewhere, send me to New York. I'm not really interested in joining those other teams. That's possible. And if that's the case, that's fantastic for New York. That means that they don't have to offer as much. If they're not bidding against other teams. The only thing they're bidding against is time, is how quickly can you get Donovan Mitchell? Or do you have to wait a year? Do you have to wait until next offseason? Do you have to wait until he becomes an unrestricted free agent a few seasons from now and hope that nobody trades for him before then? That's really what it feels like. The only thing the Knicks are really, betting against, or bidding against, I should say, in a trade package for Donovan Mitchell is it's them against how quickly they want to acquire him. But part of me still comes back to this idea that it feels like this should be a bigger deal. Like, obviously a Kevin Durant trade request is going to overshadow everything, and that's a bigger deal than a Donovan Mitchell trade request. It just is. But it feels like we should care more about this. It feels like we should know more about this. It feels like this should be a bigger headline and a bigger storyline throughout the offseason. And the only reason I can think of, the only two reasons that it wouldn't be a bigger deal, is because Donovan Mitchell just doesn't care whether he gets traded or not. And so it's just not as interesting if a guy isn't upset, or Utah isn't fully motivated to right now. But I would also ask, why would you not be fully motivated if you're Utah? You want to try and tank very clearly this season, and the best way to do that is to either trade Donovan Mitchell or bench him. And if you're going to bench him and sit him due to some fake injury halfway through the year, you might as well trade him now, because I do think that New York would be willing to give you a ton in exchange. Now, the counter to that would be wait till the trade deadline, wait until maybe there's a team out there that becomes a surprise contender. Donovan Mitchell suddenly wants to go there, and all of a sudden you have the opportunity to trade Donovan Mitchell for more than you would have right now. But to me, it seems like the difference in what you could get out of New York compared to what you could get out of them or a different team at the deadline or a year from now is pretty negligible. And you'd also have to wait 6 months or a year in order to get that in return, and that impacts your draft stock this upcoming season. And if I was Utah, I would much rather just trade him now. I'd much rather know what I have, go forward with whatever young guys I have, all the picks that I have, and just have a very clear direction. That would be my personal preference, but it's Danny Ainge. You never really know what the guy is going to do, and I'm still really interested in the situation despite the fact that we don't really know much about it. And when I went about making this video, I wanted to throw some other teams out there and say, okay, well, if it's not New York, here are some dark horse teams. Here are some really interesting possible teams that Donovan Mitchell could go to. And I went through the list and I was like, Charlotte, what's Charlotte trading? They're not trading LaMelo. There's no point in trading LaMelo for Donovan Mitchell. You'd want to pair those two guys together. They don't have anything else to trade. Miami seems content to just roll with Tyler Hero this year, and I'm not even sure they could outbid what New York has, given all the draft picks that New York does have. Portland doesn't really have all that much to offer, considering they just re-signed all these guys. None of the other big market teams, except for Brooklyn, which who knows what's going on there. They're not really into this either. There's not a lot of teams out there that have the combination of a potential, cornerstone young guy in RJ Barrett and all the draft picks that the Knicks have. There's not really a lot of teams out there that can outbid that, or that Donovan Mitchell would rather go to. And so it's really strange. Like, I really thought I was going to go throughout this video and I was going to make it and say, well, here's 5 dark horse contenders for Donovan Mitchell trade. And there aren't any. And that's what led me to the title of this video being what it is. Like, it's weird to me that there aren't more teams out there. Maybe all it comes down to is the fact that the Knicks have positioned themselves really well asset-wise and really well in terms of Donovan Mitchell really wanted to go there. And maybe that's all we need to know about the situation. Now, having said all those things, I always feel like when I do one of these videos, we have to end on a prediction. What do we think is going to happen from this point on? My guess is, given the fact that the two teams have re-engaged in trade conversations, given the fact that New York seems pretty motivated to bring in Donovan Mitchell, because even with the upgrades they've made this offseason and bringing in Jalen Brunson, they don't appear to be a guaranteed playoff team, in my opinion, this upcoming season. So bringing in Donovan Mitchell would go a long way towards that, even if they do trade RJ. Brunson, Mitchell, and Randall is certainly a very exciting proposition, and I would argue a more exciting one for this upcoming season than RJ Barrett in place of Donovan Mitchell. And so given that they're re-engaging on trade talks, given that there don't appear to be a lot of other teams interested and or willing to give up significant assets for Donovan Mitchell, and given the fact that it's the Knicks, I think it's going to happen. I think within, what is it today? We're near the end of August. I would say by October, by like mid-October, Donovan Mitchell is going to be a New York Knick. That's my best guess right now. Things can change daily in the NBA, as we all know. But if I had to put down a prediction right now, I would say that within the next 6 to 8 weeks, Donovan Mitchell is going to end up being traded to the New York Knicks. And that's really exciting. That's really interesting. Like, we talk about this all the time. I want the Knicks to be good. I want the Knicks to be fun. I want them to be interesting. And I think that makes them significantly more interesting, especially when you consider the possibility that that could lead to another big time player joining the team within the next year or two. We've talked about this before. It is a step-by-step process for them, and Donovan Mitchell, in terms of hunting stars, is the first step for them, and it feels like it's almost an inevitable outcome. It's just what they're willing to give up. My guess would be he ends up there within the next 6 to 8 weeks, and that the trade package is RJ Barrett, a lot of picks, And I'm not sure what else, because New York probably wants to keep some of their young guys on their roster, on the fringes that could develop into nice role players. And I'm sure that Utah is going to ask for some of those guys, but that's probably the main sticking point. If I had to just, put myself into the trade discussions right now, my guess would be, without knowing anything, RJ's agreed to, some combination of picks is mostly agreed to, and they would just need to figure out if, Obi Toppin's in the deal, if Emmanuel Quickley's in the deal, is Quentin Grimes in the deal. I think New York is going to fight to keep as many of those guys as they can as future trade pieces, as well as just nice assets to have on the roster. And so that's probably going to end up being the sticking point, but I would guess it's RJ picks maybe one or two of the role player young guys. And that's pretty good value for Utah in terms of draft assets, and that's pretty good value as well for New York, given where their roster is right now. It's a pretty significant upgrade. That's where I'm at with the Donovan Mitchell stuff, but like I said, it's really, really weird right now.